Thank you, Mark. And these things are all connected because now we're revisiting the 2018 budget estimates and more. We've got Oke Onuchukwu, who is a professor of economics. He's here with us in the studios. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much. I love you guys.
What if we look through those budget estimates? 8.612 trillion naira aggregate expenditure. Yes, the breakdown is, we've seen all of those. Recurrent expenditure, vis-a-vis the capital expenditure, and it goes on. But you've gone through some of these figures.
Yes, I've gone through them. Looking at the entire budget itself, which is about 8.612 trillion. It is ambitious. And I'm going to tell you why it is ambitious. But first of all, let us evaluate this based on the government plan, which is the economic recovery plan. That is what we're implementing now to see how we can, get out of recession and sustain it. This budget, can it achieve it? My answer is no, because you find out that the cost of governance is still very high, because well about 70% is for recurrent expenditure and just 30% is for capital expenditure. And you know that the only thing that can drive the economy very well is, the capital component of the budget that will provide the infrastructure and reduce, the cost of business. If you also look at the other details of the budget on how government is going to raise the revenue. Yeah. One, it is stated that about 4.17 trillion is going to come from non-oil sector. I wonder how they are going to achieve that. You and I know that the Nigerian economy is not very productive. So the manufacturing sector is not doing very well. The agricultural sector is also not doing very well. Our major source of revenue is from the oil sector. So to say that you're going to generate that amount of, revenue from the non-oil sector is something that looks like a mirage, because I don't know how you're going to get the tax from. Whether your personal income tax cannot give you that. The custom duties and all that cannot give you that. The manufacturing sector is not highly productive for you to generate enough output of goods and services for government to tax. So I wonder how government is going to generate that level of thing. Then for the oil revenue, it is estimated that about 2 trillion is going to come from that, with the assumption that government will be producing 2.3 million barrels per day, at selling at $45 per barrel. That we're going to generate, over 2 trillion, from the oil sector. It's also ambitious because the situation in the Niger Delta is also something that you cannot really, predict. We recall that recently one particular group was threatening that they will go back, to what they normally do by striking on, the oil facility. So they are not really very sure that you can attain that high level of, production. So in essence, the source of revenue is actually questionable, to finance this budget.
Now, I know they say nothing ventures, nothing wins in terms of the ambitious nature of the budget. But, beyond that, if I could broaden this a little further, because, time and again, we look at some of those budgets, we look at the figures, we look at how they intend to fund the budget. Funding is key, actually. But, there are other matters that so many people also wonder, and that has got to do with implementation of the budget, because year on year we get to see, I think was it 2, 3, 4 years ago, where a certain speaker was talking about the amount of unspent budgetary allocation which the MDAs had. They were running against time. They had to make sure they spend it or they return it. In many cases, we don't hear what happens at the end of the day. So those kind of issues, if we could tag them corporate governance issues, that's got to do with implementing the budget. Do we pay enough attention to those? Because some will say, even if you got a 30% recurrent expenditure component of the budget, if it were implemented to, say, capital expenditure, if it were implemented even up to 25%, that would make an impact, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it will. But the issue is that, like I've said, in this country, budget implementation is really a problem. You find out that budget performance has not been well over 50% at all. And going by what happened last year, we had a budget of about over 7 trillion, and the implementation was also questionable. because the budget actually did not perform and achieve the necessary goals it's supposed to, achieve. Like you also said, getting towards the end of the year, monies are released to ministries and departments gradually, not just at once. And these monies come, either quarterly or monthly, depending on how the releases are done. And maybe towards the end of the year, some of the funds that are released to these ministries, how Nigerians do, they want to spend it, so that it could enter into record that, look, they've, cleared, whatever thing that is left for that particular year. But one basic thing we must know is that implementation of budget is a function of the revenue that will accrue to government. So that's why I'm saying that I'm questioning those sources of revenue, whether they can actually, finance this, whether we can generate, such amount to finance, this budget.
So if we look at this budget in itself, and you consider this budget as a budget that will not take us anywhere, if we flip what we have now, recurrent as against the recurrent expenditure against the capital expenditure, do you think it will work for the country, and what implications will that be?
Well, the issue is that for any, economy, particularly us, that is aspiring to develop. We are aspiring to develop. We are not developed. And we are aspiring to attain the highest, level of growth in the system that will be inclusive. And for you to do that, there must be basic infrastructure on ground. And the only thing that can provide those infrastructure is the capital component of the budget. That's maybe when we get to looking at the analysis of the states, you will now see some states that are taking it the other way, what they are doing and what they have done and what they have achieved. Because business actually depends on this infrastructure. If the infrastructures are not there, the cost of business will rise. And when the cost of business rises, it becomes very problematic for business to thrive. So the idea here is that we must begin to reverse our budget to have more capital component than the recurrent, component. Because, like I said earlier, the cost of governance is high. If you look at the sectoral, distribution of this, you'll find out, okay, take Ministry of Education, for instance. The capital component of the budget of Ministry of Education is 61 billion. But the recurrent expenditure is over 400 and something billion. That's to tell you, take that 61 billion, divided by the number of universities. Let us talk about universities. Don't talk about polytechnics and all that. Divided by the number of universities. How much money will go to university for capital project, in that allocation? So what I'm saying in essence is that, while some people have argued that government is trying to pull away from financing capital expenditure in some of these schools and leave it to, the schools to do it. But you must also modify your policy. You told Nigerians that you're going to give them free education. So if you're pulling away from providing the necessary fund that will provide the facilities that will make learning, and research easy, you must also modify the policy and allow people, to fund part of it. So what I'm saying in essence is that I'm just taking education as an example, for you. If you also look at so many other sectors, even works, housing and all that, that's about 550 something billion.
Yes.
Works, there are about 3 ministries in one. So if we divide it by that, one will be getting about 100 and something million. And you know that the actual releases might not get to that. Okay. So which means that amount will still be inadequate to provide the necessary infrastructure.
So looking at the workability of the budget now, if we have a situation whereby the states themselves are able to upturn, or shall I say, because of their peculiar nature, able to maybe tinker with some of the figures, and don't you think that perhaps if it doesn't work at the government, at the federal level, looking at the whole bulk budget, it could work for the states?
Yeah, it could work for the states. Let me tell you, I'll give you examples. I come from Rivers State, and I know that in 2017 budget, the state government, allocated about 70%, to capital expenditure and 30% to recurrent expenditure. If you go to Rivers State, the entire state has turned to construction side. You see